Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong wrote in the Jewish News that the Albanese government's decision to reverse the recognition of West Jerusalem as Israel's capital was not politically motivated. I don't believe that for a minute. It was a calculated and hostile attack on Israel to satisfy the increasingly influential far-left faction of the Labor Party. Melanie Phillips has argued that singling out Israel for an act of gratuitous aggression aimed at the very core of Israeli and Jewish identity, in fact, meets the definition of anti-Semitism. I won't repeat all that has been said and written so far, other than to agree with Simon Birmingham, the Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, who wrote that this backflip was unwarranted, unnecessary and damaging. As an aside, had the Morrison government actually done something about moving the embassy, we would probably not be dealing with this debacle right now. Of course, what's driving all this is the illusion held by most of the West that the two-state solution is the only formula for ending the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and achieving peace in the Middle East. But the two-state solution has been around for about 100 years and has been a dismal failure for that whole time. Jews, and then Israelis, have repeatedly offered to sit down and negotiate in good faith, but the Palestinian Arabs simply don't want it, and they say so in all the surveys that are done. Even Birmingham has fallen into the trap by writing that Australia acknowledges the aspiration of the Palestinian people to have a future Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital, the details of which would rightly be negotiated as part of a two-state solution. But the majority of Palestinian Arabs have no such aspiration. Their only aspiration they have is to eliminate the State of Israel and replace it with another Muslim-majority terror state. I have made the point before that the Australian Jewish Association believes that some other model needs to be explored which recognises this reality. There are several around with varying degrees of acceptability, depending on your point of view, but the point is that they should at least be put on the table for discussion. On this Jerusalem issue, Australians, both Jewish and Christian, have risen up in anger against it. But why is anybody surprised? When in opposition, the Labor Party made it very clear that their plan was to realign Australia's foreign policy more closely with the Palestinian narrative. And in the few months since the election, they started doing exactly that. Firstly, they refused to sign a letter condemning the UN Human Rights Council for its plan to make criticism of Israel a permanent agenda item. Then, on Erev Rosh Hashanah, they announced a $10 million increase in funding to UNRWA, which teaches hatred of Israel and encourages jihadism. And now on Erev Simchat Torah, oh yeah, it was just a coincidence, we got this unrecognition of West Jerusalem as Israel's capital. There is surely more to come, such as recognition of something called the State of Palestine, and Australian supporters of Israel now have a clear choice as to where the elements of our community stand on Israel. You can support the New Israel Fund, the Plus 61 online magazine, or the Australian Jewish Democratic Society, which, in my opinion, all actively advocate for the Palestinian cause and against Israel's interests. You can support our communal organisations who largely got it right on this issue, but remain naively wedded to the two-state solution. Or you can support the Australian Jewish Association, which takes the view that peace in the Middle East can only be achieved by recognising the reality of the situation and then thinking outside the square. Now, I don't know which is the best formula, and we are right to take an interest, but ultimately it is for the Israelis to decide what's best for them and their region. For Australia and the West to dictate where Israel's capital can be and how the conflict should be resolved is arrogance of the highest order. This is Alan Friedman for the Australian Jewish Association.